Brews, Travel, the podcast exploring the best uncharted craft beer city across America. I'm your host, Brian.
And I'm Eric. I'm the co-host for this month of April. Brian, did you get a chance to go outside today? It was super nice outside today.
It was actually.
Yeah.
I got outside just before the podcast. Actually, I walked down
Good.
to the brewery that's right around the corner from me, Grist House. They had a really good food truck outside. I got a buffalo chicken sandwich that was delicious. It had fries on it. It had ranch on it. It had buffalo chicken on it.
That's so Pittsburgh. That's the most
yeah.
Pittsburgh thing. But for
Yeah.
people who don't know, it snowed here yesterday, and now it's 60 degrees and sunny. We don't get a lot of sunny days here, so it's been great today.
How was your day? What did you get outside?
I did. We went kind of a river trail. I'm honestly blanking on the name. We kind of went down to Millvale and kind of walked that river trail. Yeah, it's a hard word to say. River trail.
River Trail. I believe it's
Yeah.
called the Allegheny River Trail.
That sounds.
Allegheny River Heritage Trail. Something like that.
I believe it. I definitely believe it.
That's right.
What
how's
have we got going on this week? Oh, week's been great. Week's been great.
Yeah.
I'm excited to say I'm finishing up some new meads. As you know, I'm a mead maker. I have one that's buckwheat honey that I'm sweetening with bananas, flavoring with bananas. It's going to be banana buckwheat. I have a Zambian honey mead. Which is smoky, which I'm going to add some ginger and lemons to. And I have a very high percentage wildflower honey. It's like 18% that it's going to be oranges and rose hips. So yeah, making some pretty cool stuff over here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy. Hello
Yeah.
to all the subscribers joining us from home. Hope your weather was nice. Hope your chickens were buff and hope your meads were strong. Welcome to a special episode of Brews Less Traveled. Like usual, we will be featuring an excellent brewery from Des Moines, and I forgot to grab my props. I'm very
Oh, I have some props here for you, Brian.
not prepared today. Here we go. I was helping with my daughter's dinner right before I ran up here, so I'm a little flustered compared.
That's all right. I'm gonna
starts here.
help you out here.
Featuring Firetrucker Brewing Company.
That's right.
Another awesome brewery from Des Moines.
Yes, absolutely. We have some cool stickers in that box, which my stickers are already on my guitar cases, so sorry about that. And there's a really cool piece of artwork there as well. There's a visitor's guide to sort of entice you to go to Des Moines, which it sounds like it actually has enticed some people. I know that there were some people from Chicago in the chat who were talking about possibly visiting Des Moines, and it does seem like a cool spot. It's not a place I've really thought about much until this month, and it does seem like it has a lot of cool stuff going on there. So I'm excited to maybe one day check it out. We also have some beers here. What beers do we have, Brian?
And I was just saying, one of the coolest things about Des Moines was Firetrucker Brewery. We have their Escape American Wheat Ale as well as their Burnout Brown, which we're going to be drinking tonight. And normally we'd be talking to a guest, but however, this week we really couldn't make things work out. No, whatever. It's a long story. Whatever. So we're going to do a little different approach to our later segment, second half of the show, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah, I know you have something cooked up, and I'm very excited to sort of see because it's still a little bit of a surprise to me. I meant to spoil it for anyone. I know it's going to be a little bit of a story, some sort of history or something like that. I don't know much about it, so I'm excited to hear about it as well. But I'm also very excited to drink these beers. So you want to crack open a beer?
Absolutely.
Start with
Start
the
with
Escape.
American Wheat.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, American Wheat beer. Nick says beautiful in Denver today. That sounds lovely. It's always beautiful in Denver. That's one of those cities that gets like 280 days of sunlight or something like that. Coming from a city with like 70 days of sunlight, Denver can go kick rocks with their 280 plus days of sunshine.
There are more days in more sunny days in Alaska than there were in Pittsburgh, I think, last year. I need to get me one of those one of those happy lights. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ones, yeah.
Help with your seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah, that's right.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, Brian.
Ooh, that's nice. Definitely
Oh
American,
man.
not too Hefeweizen-y.
Yeah, so I meant before we sort of get too into talking about these beers, I've been very excited about these two in particular, the wheat beer and the brown ale, because neither of them are styles that are my go-tos. Nothing really against them. I find myself not going after those as much. And so I'm excited to almost revisit them. Not that I again have given them up, but just something I don't go to a lot. So I mean, right off with this Hefeweizen, or yeah, with this wheat beer, it's not so much like a Hefeweizen, which
Yeah.
sometimes honestly turns me off a little bit. Sometimes it can be done really well, of course, and then sometimes it just sort of feels like the balance of it might not be right. But that's not the case for this one at all. It has that sort of flavor that I can only really describe as like marshmallow. I guess maybe coming from some of the wheat. There's a little bit of a sweetness to it there that always reminds me of marshmallow. Are you getting any of that, Brian?
Yeah, there is a sweetness. I could see marshmallow. For me, it's just a little malty sweetness. It's balanced
Yeah.
nicely by some hop character. Nothing too strong. They say it has 32 IBUs in it, so
Yeah.
nothing too crazy. Nice drinkable beer. And certainly something that you could crush all day. What's like
Yeah.
5% alcohol? So
Yeah, this is definitely an all-day
4.5.
drinking beer. Very, very sessionable in that way. And I think because when it comes to a wheat beer, I mean, the first thing I notice is that it's not super hazy. It's not very hazy like a Hefeweizen, but there still is some haze in it there, which again just sort of I think this is a very balanced wheat beer. It's not too much in any direction, and the yeast is very clean for this. So you get a lot of the sweetness from the malts and from the yeast without it being too much in any direction. Like you said, it's not very bitter, just sort of balanced bitterness there, not overly sweet, nothing too crazy. Yeah, I like this one a lot. I'm probably going to drink this whole thing over the next 10 minutes or so. So watch me. I'm going to get really burpy.
watch me. Firetrucker was a really cool brewery. It's up in Ankeny, just like north of
Okay.
Des Moines. I think north. I probably should have looked at a map before I said that.
I
You know
think it's
what?
north.
If I only had a map to look at, it is in fact north, very north of Des Moines. It's the name Firetrucker comes because they are in an old, the old fire hall of the city of Ankeny,
That makes sense.
and I had a very lovely visit there. The
Yeah.
bartender Shelby was wonderful. She was a wonderful hostess, whatever is the proper way to
Yeah,
say
sure.
that, whatever. Showed me around, gave me great beers. They were great people to talk to. They were getting ready for their Valentine's Day celebration, as you can see behind us.
Oh, right.
It's hanging from the ceiling. Just a really cool place. And I played my favorite game when I go behind the scenes at a brewery, which is very Pittsburgh centric, as is everything I do. It's find my local breweries on the wall of stickers in the brew
Oh.
house.
But could you find any?
Absolutely. Grist
Yeah.
House, East End.
Cool.
There might have been one or two more, but those are
That's
definitely
awesome.
the ones I remember. But yeah, anytime there is one massive sticker wall at every brewery, and on that sticker wall, I always try to look for, hey, there's the local brewery.
Yeah, that's smart. I mean, I do try to. I don't really go out of town a lot, especially in the past few years, but I do always
Out of
like to have
town.
some stickers out of town. And I think the farthest I've really gone is up to Bahama, Maine. And I always like to slap a few stickers around up there. Yeah, that's a cool idea. Well, actually, I wanted to ask him, and it seems like you answered the question, but that's interesting about the name Firetrucker and why it is that. Because when I first heard this name, it like conjured up images of not being in a fire truck, but rather like a trucker that's like delivering fire. That's where my mind went to for the name. Is like it's a trucker that has fire in it. Has nothing to do with a fire truck. But
What
yeah, I don't know.
what is this? An anime show? They're
Yeah, yeah, it's all
truck that
anime.
delivers fire. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So you have something special in store for us this evening, correct?
Yes, I do. It's a soundboard.
Oh my God. You
No,
just killed the show. You just killed the show. People are gonna leave.
Or for those that joined us for the 12 Beers of Christmas, another experience by Brewvana, and joined us for New Year's Eve, and were fans of the soundboard. Congratulations, it's back. I only have 4 sounds on here this time. It's not going to get played. It's really only for like 2 things.
It's it better be for nothing is what it should be for.
I mean, it's for the sake of amusing me and annoying everyone else. So, Eric, today we are recording. Today we are recording on it is Wednesday, April 20th as we record. And that date has long been associated with smoking marijuana, to put it bluntly.
Oh my God.
Pun not intended, but...
Okay, all right. It sounded very intended, but okay.
Some might even call this a holiday, especially if you own a pair of weed leaf pajama pants. So given today's date, I would love to talk to you about the intersection of beer and cannabis. The commonalities they share, their intertwined history, and some modern attempts at combining the two into a magical elixir that it gets regulated by every government agency known to man. So
just as a first impression, I mean, I don't know that much about
lovely.
like the history or the. Are we about to ask me if I've ever smoked weed before?
No, I wasn't going to ask you that. I wasn't going to put you on the spot like that. But if you would like to answer that question,
I haven't.
Feel free.
To be honest, I really don't. I meant in college 10 years ago. Yeah, I played in a band called Bakery. And that yes. So it yeah, we were not good. We were not a good band.
Was there a weed leaf in the logo of the band?
You'd think, but no. But we were the people that would bring all of our own lights to our shows because we were like, it's gotta look trippy. I'm sure we were terrible, but you know, who knows? Who really knows? So it's not something. I mean, there's some people that are into weed so much as that we are into beer. They know so much about. I mean, I don't even know what to refer to it as, about cultivating it, different strands, this and that, and I don't know anything about any of that. So. I don't know if you're about to enlighten me a little bit or what.
I guess so. I was going to ask, have you ever had a weed infused beer?
No.
You've not? Okay.
No.
Have you ever seen them out and about?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well that question went nowhere. So wonderful. And
yes, all the time.
Yeah. Eric, read the script. Come on. So Eric doesn't have a script. This is a secret for him.
We're off the books.
These weird weed infused beers they're kind of a new thing. The earliest traces we could find of them go back to like 2009. But cannabis and beer, they go way back. Like way back. As some listeners may know, or Eric, you may know, cannabis and Hupulus lupulus, the technical term for hops, are actually closely related, sharing many of the same components and characteristics. You could call them biological cousins. And that relationship goes way back.
Okay.
Way back.
You mean the relationship between just the hops, or do you mean using weed as a bittering and flavoring agent in beer?
No, I found no evidence of that, actually.
Okay. Gotcha.
Those two plants go back, biologically speaking, like 27 million years.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like 27 million years ago, cannabis and Humulus lupulus were actually the same plant. There was only what is known as cannabis sativa. It's a certain type of weed. This isn't a weed show. We're not going to go too deep into that. But eventually hops would evolve from that. They think right around 25 million years. That's what we have good evidence. It's not like super set in stone. The biological record is shaky
Sure.
at
Yeah.
best. But hops like a wetter environment, a wetter climate to grow in, whereas cannabis traditionally grows better in like a climate with really dry winters, especially. So they kind of split off in that regard somehow, growing and developing in different areas, and just through genetic selection
Right.
or natural selection and evolution, they kind of split off. So hops and cannabis share a key ingredient that they kind of took when they kind of separated and went their separate ways. And they're these organic compounds known as terpenes. Do you know what terpenes are, Eric?
Terpenes.
Terpenes, yes.
Man, I feel like I should, but I don't. No, what's a terpene?
So terpenes are organic compounds that are partially responsible for the flavors and aromas that are associated with hops.
Okay. All right. Makes sense.
So, Hitchhiker Brewing locally here in Pittsburgh. They have a beer called Myrcene IPA.
Okay.
You familiar? No? Okay.
No, I'm not actually.
Okay. So they have a beer called Myrcene. Myrcene is probably the most common terpene in hops. It's the smell that you would identify as hop smell, like how the hop fridge smells at the homebrew store, or what it smells like when you walk into a brewery and they just add hops to a boiling beer. That is Myrcene.
And you're saying that that compound is also found in marijuana?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It has a bunch of other different prominent terpenes, and so do hops, and they all come together and contribute to the different flavors that make up different hops, and contribute to the oil levels that are in different hop varietals. And cannabis is the same way. They don't have as much. It doesn't have as much myrcene in it, but the terpenes in cannabis play a slightly different role. They actually have a lot more to do with the effect that a particular strain of cannabis. I think we should maybe go into that. Like, there's styles of beer and there's varietals of hops. There's different like strains of cannabis, so you could have different names that when people say funny names like Northern Lights and I can't OG Kush and stuff. Those are referring to the different strains, and terpenes really have a lot to do with like the variance between those different strains, and actually have an effect on the user, a psychoactive effect on the user.
Is it because that it's found in maybe greater amounts in marijuana versus hops?
Yeah, they're different. They're different terpenes. Myrcene doesn't have similar effects. They're found in greater quantities, and it's also that kind of matrix effect of there being other psychoactive chemicals present, such as THC and CBD and all these other fancy things that are in there.
Okay, well, I don't want to skip ahead. I don't want to cut out your story or anything like that. But you talked about THC infused beers. Are there beers that are bittered with marijuana, hemp, something like that?
No, I found no evidence of that, and that actually kind of
at all. I know I asked them if they did that back in the day, but still, okay, wow.
I did limited research for this. I looked things up for the past 5-6 days or so, but it's not something that's like written about far and wide. I couldn't find any books that are specifically like stoners in beer. Which,
right.
I mean, we'll get to it in a little bit here, but basically that's the story of American homebrewing, is you could call it stoners in beer. But we'll
fair.
get to that in a second. They also both contain resinous glands that create the acids in hops and the cannabinoids in cannabis, so the stuff that makes the THC, and also the acids that are in the hops. And maybe this speaks to a little bit of what you just said in terms of using cannabis as like a bittering element in beer. That never has happened because the alpha and beta acids in hops are really what contributes those bittering qualities to beer. And as far as I know, that doesn't happen with cannabis plants.
Okay.
One of the major differences.
Gotcha. Cool. We have someone in the comments saying that there's a lot of cannabis beers on Untapped, and
Yes.
maybe it's because we live here in Pennsylvania where laws around marijuana are still pretty strict, pretty controlled,
Yeah.
that we really don't see them like at all.
We don't, and we'll talk to one. We'll talk about one eventually here. I have in my notes that made its way around here, and a couple did with different terpenes and actually beers made with hemp. But you know, again,
Did
we don't. It's not legal. It's not like we're not like Oregon. We're not like Colorado. We're not like Michigan. We don't have
right.
recreationally available
I do have a
marijuana.
question here from the chat that I'm going to relay to you. I do not know the answer, but perhaps you might. Actually, I think I might know the answer. Nick is asking what hops are used to make dank flavor like in Sweetwater's 420 strain, and I believe there's something called G13. Am I correct in that, or that's a different? That's a different beer.
No, no, that's great. That is one of that's one of the variants that Sweetwater did was G13. That's actually the name of a weed strain, and they tried to mimic that by using terpenes. But also, there's aromas that are like that's the obvious indicator to most people that that they have a shared genetic lineage. Like if you've smelled either of them at
Hmm.
any point, you kind
Hmm.
of get like, oh, that kind of smells like that, and that kind of a dank smell, as the kids would say, is mostly due to something called methyl mercaptans, and specifically Columbus hops, Summit hops, and Apollo hops are loaded with methyl mercaptans, and that gives it that dank, very weed-like smell. Especially Columbus. If you've ever had beers that are hopped heavily with Columbus, especially certain
Yep.
using it in certain connotations, that'll really get that weed quality. And but I think those G13 beers benefit from actually they use actual terpene extractions in those.
Gotcha. Well, and kind of in that wheelhouse, just for our audience and our guests that are joining us here, um, just sort of understanding hops and how they relate to beer, not just on a fundamental level, but on a flavor level of different kinds of hops. I mean, hazy IPAs are a really great way to do this. There's a local brewery here that it's going to be the same base malt, and then every month they're going to just use a single kind of hop. You can also make or search out beers called Smashes, stands for single malt and single hop, and it's a really good way to get a sense of what these hops do, if they're more bitter, if they're more flavorful, dank, citrusy, all those sort of things. And that way, because I mean we all know that there's so many hazy IPAs out there in the market that when you look at one and it says hopped with so and so, you can get a better idea of, oh, this is the one that I like, this is the kind for me, versus I believe we know someone who hates Simcoe hops.
We
Is,
do,
yes, hates
we
Simcoe
do.
hops. So, but he knows, and he knows a lot, but he knows that that is not the hop for him. So maybe there's a hop out there that you love or that you hate.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Shout out to our mutual friend,
Well,
B Dog.
yes,
Um,
absolutely. Well, before we sort of keep going, I feel like I want to crack open this brown. You want to crack open the brown ale?
Definitely, let's do it. And that's a good time to do it because we're going to stop talking sciencey stuff and we're going to talk American history here.
Okay.
Um,
I
but
do
let's
have
get
on
into
my
this burnout brown here.
my mitochondria shirt, the powerhouse of the cell. So I feel like it's the perfect time to talk about sciencey stuff. Brown ale.
It's the
Okay.
powerhouse of the cell.
It is.
Cheers, everybody.
Still pouring. All right.
All right,
Cheers.
cheers. I'll cheers you again. Um, yes, it is time for another Scotty and Pat. I also really like this brown. Eric, what are you thinking?
Okay. Yeah, I need to sort of sit with it for a second because I just
All
got a
right.
lot of foam there. Well, so like I said, browns and really a lot of darker beers are never my go-to. I think I just don't necessarily have the palate for it, maybe because I always get a lot of sweetness, and I think that I generally like bitter and more malty things. So let me sort of take another sip here.
Yeah, while you dig through that, we're gonna get started into our story here, and we'll get your thoughts.
Okay, yeah, let's do it that way.
So, Eric, as you may know, the
Mhm.
Pilgrims they landed on Plymouth Rock because they were actually running out of beer
I've
on the
heard this
boat.
story before. Yes.
Yeah, and not surprising enough, it's kind of hard to make beer on a boat, so they landed quickly. Some would say illegally landed at Plymouth Rock. They were trying to make it to Jamestown, the colony of Jamestown. Um, so they landed because they ran out of beer, and they were supposed to go to a colony called Jamestown. Jamestown was a colony where actually the residents of that were historically known to grow cannabis, and more specifically, hemp. It was integral to the growth of the early American colonies. Our early founders would tell colonies, especially Jamestown, to grow more hemp to help create textiles, which the colonists could sell, which could fund the early days of this country.
Great. Sorry,
Thoughts on the
I
brown ale?
wasn't listening to that at all. Yeah, I've just been thinking about this brown ale.
Listening to that at all?
No, I was like, Brian will finish up at some point, and then I'm just gonna launch into this brown ale. I hope everyone else was interested. Um, yeah. So this brown ale. So I had to think about this because again, brown ales are not my wheelhouse here. So the first thing I get is a lot of sort of sweetness from the malts. But really, sort of what it ends with is a good amount of bitterness. Am I crazy in thinking that, Brian? It's really
Notes a
sort
little
of
bitterness, like
yeah.
a maybe a burnt sugar raisin
Yes,
character.
that's exactly what it is. There is a burnt sugar,
Hmm.
and I think maybe especially comparing it to the wheat beer that we just had, that maybe it feels a little bit more bitter. Just comparing it to that,
Hmm.
but it do get. I mean, I think burnt sugar is like really like the perfect word for this. There's a little tiny bit of nuttiness, but I think overall it's those roasted sort of toasted notes that you typically find in a brown ale. So as a non brown ale, non sort of dark beer drinker overall, this is a beer I can drink. This is because it's not really one way. It's still pretty balanced between the bitterness and the sweetness, and I think I'm gonna enjoy this one a lot, Brian. So
Nice.
you were talking about Jamestown.
Yeah, and you weren't listening and being
I
rude, so
heard
you deserve
Jamestown.
this.
I heard Jamestown.
Your opinion, man.
Okay. Well, like I
Thank
said,
you.
I'm limited. I'm limited on my soundboard here. So eventually, the colonies would get the American Revolution upgrade pack, and we became a full-blown country with a president and a government and states instead of colonies. And the first president, a guy named George Washington, maybe you've heard of him, actually grew hemp on his plantation at Mount Vernon. So directly tied to the founding of this country, the growth of the country early on, and the first president would actually grow hemp on his plantation. Eventually, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I had a question. What was it primarily used for?
So hemp is very good at becoming. It's a very good textile maker. So they could use it to make rope. It makes very very strong rope. You could use it to make paper. You could use it to make clothes. Pretty much
Okay.
anything that you could make
Yeah,
textiles.
sure.
I mean, nowadays there is potential to turn it into plastic substitutes.
Yeah.
It's very 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 versatile.
Yeah, I mean, I knew all that. I just wasn't sure if it was in that time frame. They primarily used it for rope. Like,
Rope,
if there was a
rope,
main. Okay,
clothing,
gotcha,
yeah,
gotcha.
stuff like that.
Okay,
Yeah, they
cool.
definitely weren't like turning it into plastics or making hemp beer with it.
Right.
So eventually, cannabis would find its way into pharmacies in the mid 19th century.
Yeah.
Pharmaceutical uses for it, much like other recreational drugs that people know about nowadays, such as cocaine and heroin. People say I'm a recreational cocaine user? Like I'm a
I don't think
recreational
so.
plant.
I think people that
Other
have
drugs.
problems try to say that. They're like, I just do it recreationally. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, no, you don't.
Other drugs that you may be familiar with, such as cocaine or heroin, also saw this kind of pharmaceutical use around these times. And at the same time, mid 19th century, brewing was exploding throughout America. Thanks to innovations in brewing techniques, and especially thanks to Louis Pasteur isolating beer yeast. Every town in America had a local brewery through the 1800s, and things expanded. But both wonderful substances would take a hit at the turn of the century. By 1900, there were 29 states with laws about cannabis, while the temperance movement, with their push for a more Puritan society, was ramping up. And in 1913, the first state would make it illegal to sell or use cannabis without a prescription. Can you guess which state that is?
Is it
Or that
Pennsylvania?
State that was? It is
it
not.
ours?
No, it's a state that you would not suspect.
1913, California, Colorado, or New York.
California is correct.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, they made a Poison Control Act in 1907, which made previously mentioned drugs like cocaine and heroin illegal to use without a prescription, and they had an amendment in 1913 to add cannabis to that list. As we know, in 1920, prohibition was ratified, and the manufacture of alcohol would become illegal for 13 awful long years.
Yeah. Long
Boom.
time.
Yeah. Around this time, cannabis is being demonized, mostly through, let's be frank, racist accusations using jazz musicians and people of color.
Yeah,
And,
Richard Nixon and Kissinger were not. You know what? I'm just gonna leave it at not. They were not.
We're not into Tricky Dick and Mr. Kissinger yet. Kissinger is actually still over in Germany, escaping getting ready to escape a very terrible thing that would happen over the next 15 years there. But this isn't a podcast where we're going to talk about Henry Kissinger. Harry Anslinger is the. God, I'm off on a tangent.
You're getting excited.
Harry Anslinger is the person who really took this on, because after alcohol became legal again in 1933.
I'm leaving.
Anslinger was a big fan of prohibition, and he would turn his sights and the sights of the newly created Federal Bureau of Narcotics towards cannabis. Cannabis was effectively then made illegal on the federal level in 1937 with the passing of the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, as you would guess it. So fast forward. We're going to fast forward like 30 years to the 70s. The area of the hippie is in full effect. People start liking weed a lot again. Mm-hmm. They liked it before.
But now they're a little more open. It's coming out. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. A lot fewer people also start liking good beer. Some of those people are the same people. Even fewer of those people are the same people. Those people would eventually get into the hobby of homebrewing. Some of the hippies that were homebrewing during this time, while enjoying a joint or two, would eventually go pro and kickstart the craft beer revolution through the 70s and 80s. As we all know, craft would grow through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Eventually, brewers would attempt to combine weed and beer into one powerful beverage. The earliest examples of this was Humboldt Brown Hemp Ale, made by Humboldt Brewing Company in 2009. Does the name Humboldt ring a bell to you at all? Does that stand out in any significance?
Humboldt.
Yes.
No.
So Humboldt County is part of what's known as the Emerald Triangle in California, where they grow more weed than any other area of the United States. So this brewery that's in the area takes some hemp seeds, they toast them, and they add them to this brown ale, and they release Humboldt Brown Hemp Ale made with toasted hemp seeds in 2009. And that's kind of the first commercial example we have of people trying to meld the two. And this was an example made with toasted hemp seeds. They added it in there, I would suppose, entirely for flavor and characteristic, and in some sense gimmick, dare I say, to some degree. Well,
have you ever had a beer like that where it's toasted? Yeah. So
not toasted hemp seeds. Okay. We'll get to that in a second, though. We'll get to it now. In 2018, New Belgium released their Hemperor HPA, their hemp pale ale, that saw wide, possible national distribution, maybe ? It was here in Pittsburgh one day, and I was at a bar, and someone ordered it, and I walked by them, and I thought that they had like a bag of weed open in their hands as they walked by me, because that's how strong that beer smelt like
Wow.
weed. I was in retail at the time, and we would have wholesalers come in and say that they would hear from bars that would complain about getting the smell and taste of that hemper beer out of their draft lines, because
Yeah.
anything that they put on that draft line after the hemper was on there,
It's
would
just gonna taste like it.
taste like
Yeah.
that hemp beer. So there are examples like that brewed with hemp byproducts, toasted hemp seeds. I'm not sure how New Belgium did theirs, but there's also terpenes, our old friends from earlier, callback, make another appearance. And in 2015, Dad and Dude's Breweria in
I love that name. Dad
it's
and
pretty cool.
Dude's Breweria.
A pretty cool name. Yeah, it's pretty cool. In Colorado, they released their
course.
Indica IPA and Sativa Double IPA at the Great American Beer Festival, and both of those beers were brewed using different cannabis terpene oils. So after this, terpene oils would become the preferred method of experimenting with cannabis in beer. It's important to note that both types of cannabis beers, hemp and terpene infused, offer no psychoactive or
I was just
pain-relieving
about to
effects.
ask. Okay.
But they rather add a new flavor component for brewers to blend into the matrix of flavors that happens when you ferment a thing and have this crazy biological reaction that does all these things to the flavor compounds that you put in there and creates these whole new flavors. And I think that's why it's appealing to brewers. You know, obviously it originated out of this like, whoa, it's weed. It's like hops, man. They're like the same. They smell the same. They're cousins. Like,
Right.
and now it's like, well, there's a lot. There is this scientific approach where they're kind of coming back to it from, well, there's biological relatives here. There's terpenes that are present in both of theirs. There's these oils that contribute to the flavor and experience of both of these compounds, these things, hops and cannabis. And what if we could add those flavors without adding the bitterness or the vegetal character that can come from hops? And that really, in my research, has been what breweries like about it, is that they can add hop terpenes that can get those bright, dank flavors without
it's
the
a
bitterness.
flavor. Right. It's almost a flavor that's hard to describe because it's just the flavor, of itself. If that makes sense. It's just sort of the flavor, like, I don't know. How do you describe the flavor? It's hard, right? It's a unique flavor. It's kind of earthy, kind of like hops, vegetally, but not overly so. Yeah. That's interesting. Just another
citrusy, just like hops. There's citrusy, flavored ones,
Sure.
berry flavored ones, and I think that's what's appealing to the brewers is let's bring this new element in. Let's play around with this. Like, beer at its core is 4 ingredients, and the more things that you could add into there that are going to give you more tools to play with within reason is cool. I mean, I say within reason because, like, I'm not going to try to advocate for people putting whole cakes in their beer and stuff like that. But
whole cakes.
Yeah, bro, you haven't seen that? You haven't seen the memes of people throwing like whole cakes and like
I have
donuts in the beer?
I mean, there's a brewer around here that puts cake mix in their beer, and I think it's okay. But yeah, I just didn't know it was a thing I just thought it was a gimmick, I guess.
Yeah, if that's what you like, you do you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Cool. I want to actually just real fast go back to this brown ale, talk about it for like a third time, because now that I've been drinking it and sort of am away from this wheat beer, like all that bitterness I was getting is gone, and really it tastes, it's so chocolatey to me now. It's very sweet and chocolatey. Is primarily what I was getting. Like, I think some of that bitterness was coming from the wheat beer, so like just the overlap of on my palate there. But now that bitterness is like gone, and it's like I'm drinking like chocolate. It's delicious.
Yeah, it is.
That's all I had to say about it.
As it's starting to warm up.
Yeah, definitely.
So one of the funny things in doing my research for this is I read a couple of those millennials will kill this articles.
Mhm.
And many folks thought that CBD and hemp beers would take over the market, and millennials would kill normal beers with their fancy wheat
Oh
beers, which is
no.
really funny to read.
I'll
And it
only go
almost
to
happened.
Applebee's if they have CBD beer.
Yeah. And it almost looked like it would happen. Like I mentioned, in 2018, New Belgium would release their Hemperor with, like, I thought, wide national distribution. However, after that, and some success with Sweetwater's G13 series and their terpene series, Johnny Law has stopped many breweries from experimenting with terpenes, and especially CBD, the non-psychoactive pain-relieving compound found in cannabis. Florida cracked down on it hard, but as some of our wonderful subscribers have mentioned in the chat already, places like Oregon, Colorado, Massachusetts, you can find terpene-infused, hemp-infused beers on tap, and I would suggest trying one. I really liked the Hemperor when I tried it. I've tried the Sweetwater ones locally here. Hop Farm, they had an IPA that they infused with terpenes that was really nice and expressive without being too overly bitter.
Huh.
But it wasn't super juicy like a New England IPA. It was really, really nice. It was a beautiful beer, and I'm excited to see what more brewers can do with them as, restrictions loosen up and
Yeah.
people can experiment more.
Yeah, you'll have to let me know next time something like that pops up, because like that was totally off my radar, and I definitely want to try it out. I'm also interested in I'm a mead maker, and there's tobacco honey, and I wonder if which I definitely want to get a bunch of tobacco honey and make a mead out of it, and I want to call it Good News Cigarette Juice, which is a joke from a TV show that probably only Brian and I know, but that's all right.
People get
Yeah, there's like 4 people get that. But I wonder if there's some sort of like hemp honey out there, and where I can get some, and how I play around with it.
Yeah, I think that's our takeaway from this is we need
Yeah.
to find some hemp honey.
Well, and it sounds like, I mean, I'm reading people in the chat, like people are saying all these great ones that they've had. The Hemperor. Someone just said Terrapins in Athens has a hemp IPA called Jazz Cabbage. Which is a great name.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not something that's like on my radar a lot, and it's something that I now want it to be on my radar.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping if there's a listener out there that takes away anything from this, it's basically like there's a new style of beer out there. How many IPAs and brown ales and stouts and stuff like that have we all had? And like, this is something new that you can try, without putting cake in your beer or making it blue raspberry milkshake IPA. Yeah.
Put drugs in your beer. That's okay. That's basically what we're saying. Don't put cake in your beer. That's not what we're saying. Use scientifically crafted, extracted terpenes and hemps to add more flavor compounds, but like,
And partake responsibly.
put drugs in the beer. No, don't do that. I think there will be long way before we see any kind of cross between psychoactive drugs and alcohol that is strictly regulated by the FDA and is highly illegal to adulterate alcohol in that way. So
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
it's a fact. It's not, what do you agree with? That's
I agree with
you
your
not
facts.
listening again?
No, I was thinking about this brown ale.
Okay. Eric, final thoughts.
No, I don't think I have any final thoughts. I mean, these beers have been great, both of them. I definitely enjoyed them, even though they were outside my style. It was nice to like try something a little bit different and learn about something that's a little bit different. So this whole episode for me has really been educational, I'll say. And I'm sorry that that Firetruck couldn't make it, but I'm very excited that his beers could make it to my belly. So cheers to everyone that's still out there, and thanks again for having me on. I think next week is my last week I'll be on. Is that correct?
It will be your last week.
Sad day. For now, that's right. If the people request me, I will be back. You hear that? Write in. Say we want more.
We got that thing. We got that thing. We got more months of Brews Less Traveled coming. We got the 12 Beers of Christmas coming up in 8 short months. You'll be back on some semblance of a live stream that I host, and we drink beers and we make dumb jokes and references that two other people understand, and we have a good time. So
cool,
whatever.
Perfect, awesome. Thank you.
Thanks to everybody who made it to the end here, making it through that different episode. Thank you so much. Thanks to Eric. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks to Eric for co-hosting. And of course, like Eric said, thanks to Firetrucker for the great beers. You can check out more from Firetrucker at firetrucker.com. Have you been thinking, dang, I'd like to try beers from a new uncharted beer city every month? Well then, by golly, you're in luck. Check out the Brews Less Traveled Beer Club at brewvana.com and sign up today to get beers shipped directly to your front door. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Untapped, at Brewvana. We'll be back next week with some great beers from our final featured brewery in the city of Des Moines, Kinship, a brewery that actually just released a collab with last week's brewery, Exile.
Cool.
We'll talk about that. We'll be back with our normal format, which will mean we'll have a guest, or possibly two, from Kinship. But until then, stay safe, be kind, and
smoke weed every day.
No, I'm just kidding. Support your local breweries. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks for watching Brews Less Traveled on YouTube. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more interviews with brewery professionals.